What's up, YouTube? So before we get started on Undisputed, they're going to be talking about Antonio Brown and how has his trade affected how the market's going to play with other high caliber players and what that's going to do. So let's see what they have to say.
Don't agree, Skip, because I don't believe that they're. First of all, you got to be a player of AB's caliber, top 1, 2, 3 player at your position. Normally, what we get when we see players like this is that they're compensated by their team.
Yeah.
And when they're compensated by their team, they don't behave like this. Now, they did compensate AB, but AB's behavior was formulated long, long ago, and they didn't correct it then. And so once he saw he could get an advantageous hand, he took full advantage of it.
He did.
But and the teams are always concerned about precedent if it's bad for the team. Now, AB did what he did. He had 3 years left on his contract, Skip. But how many times have we seen teams cut a player that has 3 years left on his contract and they don't care nothing about the precedent?
True.
And we saw.
Exactly, Shannon. These teams couldn't care less about you as a player because they can just go get somebody else. They would have no problems cutting you and throwing you to the dogs if they can. So on the flip side, have these players get your money and do what you got to do because these teams will have no problem throwing you away as soon as you hurt, as soon as you lose a step, as soon as you get a bit older, as soon as you have an argument with somebody. So it works both ways. Both teams and the players, they're looking out for the best interest, which makes sense. So let's keep going.
The precedent that they set, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the very team that this team is concerned about, with Le'Veon Bell. Play his contract out, franchise. What about that precedent? So as long as the precedent is in my favor, Skip, I'm good with it.
Exactly. So this is kind of like a double-edged sword for the Pittsburgh Steelers because they were trying to set the precedents with Antonio Brown and saying, we're going to keep you and we're going to let you go even though you have 3 years on your contract because of all the drama that happened with him. But at the same time, on the same team to have Le'Veon Bell and saying, well, we're not going to pay you what you want. So if you're going to sit out, fine, you can do that. You sit out all you want. We're not going to budge. They have two problems on their teams with two superstars that it creates a bad situation. It's like, what situation do you take care of? You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't with either of those two players. So it was just a perfect storm of everything that happened with Antonio Brown. But let's keep going.
This in the players' favor, I got a problem with it. But I don't think this is going to happen because I believe there are more players that if they're AB's caliber, they'll be compensated and they won't behave like this even if they're not. This is
exactly, Shannon, because exactly when you have players that are the caliber of Antonio Brown, a top 3 wide receiver in the league, they have super bargaining chips and the teams know it. So they make sure they do everything in their power to make sure that player is happy, whether it be huge contracts, which goes without saying, or giving them political power in the locker room and facilities. You listen to what this guy does. This guy gets special treatment. This guy, we want to do whatever it is to make sure this guy's happy so we don't have any problems with him because he is a top player in whatever position he plays, which is kind of the same thing that Antonio Brown. He wasn't happy. He got paid, but there was other things where he wasn't happy, so he had to go. He was rocking a boat until he finally fell out. So let's keep going.
All about AB and his behavior.
Yeah.
I'm not, like I said, there are some things everybody could have done better. But let's not pretend that AB was a model citizen in this and somehow the Steelers wronged him.
Okay. I agree with everything you just said. I'm always pro-player when it comes to money because they still don't get paid enough for what they do for these franchises.
3.4 years.
So some people might think Skip is crazy for saying these players make millions of dollars. What do you mean they're not being compensated for what they're doing for these teams? These NFL teams probably make $1 billion a year, if not more. And definitely the NFL altogether, that's $1 billion a year company. They make billions. So if you play a player, I don't know, maybe $30 million a year, how much is that of $1 billion? And we're not talking about other sales and, merchandise and all that. So what the players have really been playing is kind of pennies on the dollar, except it's millions on the billions. So it's a lot, but compared to what the owners are making, It's not that much. It's not that much. So let's keep going.
Average
Ratings. I agree. You're right. It's such a violent game. And yet, I cannot believe to this moment what Antonio Brown pulled off.
He did it.
I don't know how he did it.
Yeah.
This is a cornerstone Pittsburgh Steelers National Football League franchise. This is one of the examples that get set for generations.
Yes.
And he went up against that franchise and got out of a contract that had 3 years left.
Yep.
And just talked his way right out of town, acted his way right out of town, right?
Yep.
How do you do that?
He did it because it was a perfect storm. It was the absolute perfect storm of having everything work his way. For one thing, he's the top wide receiver in the NFL, so he's got bargaining chips there. He's having trouble dealing with the staff and Mike Tomlin and the management. So that was, they kind of were having problems there. They kind of wanted to probably get rid of him. He knows he can play the market and go someplace else, and other teams will look at him and pay him an even bigger contract than what he has with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everything going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Le'Veon Bell, and they're trying to use leverage to have him come back, even though he sat out and lost 14.5. So it was the perfect storm for Antonio Brown to do what he did. And him hyping it up, acting crazy, dyeing his mustache blonde, and all of that. It's just a perfect storm for him to get out of that 3-year contract. Now, other players, you better be cautious if you want to try and do that. You better be a top 3 player in your position. And even then, it might not happen. This is just a perfect storm of everything working out just right for Antonio Brown, which is why this doesn't happen a lot. So let's keep going.
That to the Steelers. I
Like Lucifer said, act the fool.
Okay,
act the fool.
Okay, and I kept waiting for the Steelers to say, you know what? Just keep acting out. We don't care. Right. We'll see you at training camp, or you won't get paid.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And they didn't. They finally just folded. They crumbled, and they said, okay, we'll give you to the highest bidder. And then he goes to Oakland and gets a new deal. More guaranteed. Yes. How do you do that? Okay, so here's my point on this. I'm with you. The anonymous quote is about, has Pandora's box been opened? Well, it may have. I'm sure there are other players who will say, I'm going to try the same thing. And yet, it's up to the team to bet the big money on the right guy. Right? That's how you beat this this new behavior or misbehavior. You have to pick the right guy to give the contract to.
Yes.
So I'll switch leagues briefly, and let's go to that guy number 2 in San Antonio who quit on the Spurs last year. Okay, so what was happening there behind the scenes? Well, he acted out and wanted out in part because they wouldn't just automatically say, we'll give you the max, because they dragged their feet on it because they weren't sure if he was their kind of guy.
Right.
Okay?
And I don't think Popovich would have ever said, Popovich will let you rest on his time.
On his time, not...
You're not just going to say, well, Pop, I want tonight off. And he says, okay.
So he was the one guy who was kind of against the grain of what the Spurs were built to be.
And actually, to tell the truth, I think the Spurs should have done whatever they could do to keep Kawhi. You do whatever you can. A player like that, he's arguably a top 3 player in the NBA right now with superior defensive skills. He already won a ring with the Spurs and was MVP. So a guy like that, I would do whatever it takes to keep him there. That just tells you the trouble that was going on in-house in San Antonio. Definitely. You keep a guy like Kawhi. You don't ever let that guy get away. And he's relatively young. I think he's like 29, I think. So he's got a lot of basketball left to play in him. So I don't know. But let's keep going.
Correct.
And R.C. Buford went and stole him on draft night from Larry Bird. He is the 15th overall pick, and he gave George Hill and got back number 2, and he got Davis Bertans, who's now one of the league-leading three-point shooters. He's a good player. Not a great player, but a good player.
Yeah, he's unbelievable.
And he is fearless, man.
Yes.
Okay, but you got both those guys back for George Hill, but you were betting a little bit against the grain because you knew that guy, number 2, he'd come from a troubled background, whatever, and he might be his own man to against your grain. Like they don't have their own men in San Antonio.
Right.
You end up doing what Coach Pop says, right?
Yes.
And he'll be good to you, but you do it on his...
But a lot of this is the Steelers' fault.
Okay.
Because you saw what Antonio Brown was becoming before you gave him the money. So what happens? I keep telling people, money will never change a person. It makes you a bigger... more of whatever you already are.
I agree. Same with Odell.
Yes.
They gave him
but
the
it
money.
didn't change
What do you expect?
No, exactly.
Yeah, but that would be understandable if these guys, if Odell, Kawhi, and Antonio Brown, if they were rookies coming in, I can see they were changed by that money that you might not see until you get millions of dollars, because that could never come out until you make that type of money. But these guys are working on a second or third contract. So it's not like these guys just got money. These guys have more than enough money to retire off of. More than enough. So it's not like the money changed them. It had to have been something else. Because after a certain amount of money, you're going to be whatever you are, and it's going to really bring it out. An extra amount of money is not going to bring out more when you're already financially set. So there has to be more to it than that. But let's keep going.
So now what you've done is that you've emboldened him because you've given him security. Because, see, Skip, I believe had they not given Antonio Brown what they gave him last year, he got $20 million guaranteed, fully guaranteed, like 19.7, fully guaranteed.
Okay.
Had they kept him on that original contract, I don't believe he acts up like this. But you gave him some reinforcements. You gave him a fallback. He's like, if I have to, I can sit this thing down because I did just get 19 million of your bucks. So I can really sit this thing down if I have to.
Okay.
And he kept him on that $6 million contract. I don't know if he has the luxury of doing this. So teams, you need to be more thoughtful. But don't worry. Now you worried about precedent? Skip, this happened one time. We've seen how many guys, probably 35, get cut with years remaining on their contract.
I agree with that.
So now you take one isolated incident, and now you're concerned about a situation that you never seem concerned about when the players get cut all the time.
Because Antonio Brown...
Well, they didn't want to deal with that because they don't want the precedent being set by the players and having them have control of where they go, how much money they can get. They didn't want them to have that control. That's why it only takes one time for... I guess, I don't really want to say it, the peasants, if you will, to get out of line and start to revolt before the masters, the CEOs, the owners have to nip that in the butt. They want the complete control. You can have the little guys, aka the football players, thinking they can run shop. That's why it only takes one time for the peasants to get out of line, and you have to crack the whip and get them back on line. The owners are in charge of everything. We run everything, which is... it doesn't seem too good. That's what the players' union and everything that goes along with that. Now, I wasn't calling the players peasants or anything like that, but I'm just saying compared to the owners who are making $1 billion versus the players that are making millions, they are kind of the low ball. So let's just keep going.
Actually created a new loophole.
Right.
But you got to force your way through the loophole,
Correct.
right? And it's going to get ugly, and you better be built for it, and he's built for it, right?
It's like Khalil Mack, Skip. The only leverage that a player has is his ability to hold out.
Yeah.
Khalil Mack could have came in and played a good citizen, and who's to say that the Raiders would have given him the contract?
Yeah.
Because that's what Aaron Donald did. They said, well, Aaron, we're going to take care of you. We're going to take care of you. He held out. He ended up coming in. They ain't take care of him. He said, I tell you what, you promised me last year. I'm not coming back until you give. The only leverage a player has, Skip, is his ability to hold out. That's it.
Do you think Julio Jones will ever try to pull this off?
No.
He will not. He's not built that way.
No. That's not.
Right?
That's not.
Yeah, Julio Jones is a quiet baller. I do not see him with that type of personality to rock the boat, to push things like that. He might do something that his agent says and to maybe quietly hold out here or there, but to be making all this noise and to having a whole hoopla, I don't see that Julio Jones at all doing anything like that. And he's arguably a top 3 wide receiver, just like Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham Jr. So, I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. But let's keep going.
Okay, and we look at switching leagues again. Anthony Davis also wasn't built this way, except he's a clutch client, and LeBron said, I need you in L.A., so he went completely against his nature and made waves, right?
Well, if they had done what we had asked them to do in the beginning, this would have never became public.
Okay.
Because here's the thing.
It shouldn't have become public. That is correct.
Right. The thing with Julio, Skip, is that Mr. Blank, they took some money and they gave it to him.
Yep.
And they gave him like $3 or $4 million last year.
Yep.
Mr. Blank gave him his word. Julio, we'll redo this deal.
And?
They redeal the deal.
Yeah.
But Julio done call. Skip, Julio catch for 300 yards one game and catch for 50, and you don't know which game he had was the best game.
Agreed.
Because he's the exact same. You can ride with that. But, man, I can't be giving you $25 million, $60 million guaranteed, and you throwing coolers all over the place, and you showing up late for practice, you showing up late for meetings, you Facebooking live. Skip, they don't even let the NFL do that.
No.
So will Antonio turn into a model citizen in Oakland?
Absolutely not.
Somehow doubt that.
Absolutely not.
I think Antonio will be what he is. I think he'll be under a little bit more control because it's a new system. You have new teammates depending on how the season goes. I think John Gruden can keep him in check for the most part. You know, they have to start out on the right foot, and everybody has to get a feel for each other's personalities. And I think having a good coach should be able to mold and maintain and not cater, but cater to everybody's personalities and know what you're getting and what you're having to deal with. John Gruden is nothing new. He's been around the block a few times. He's had Super Bowl teams with players and different egos and all that. So I trust that John Gruden will be able to work with Antonio Brown. And plus, you know, John Gruden's got, another 10 more years on his contract, 9 more years of contract guaranteed. So he's not going anywhere anytime soon. So let's just keep going.
Was on a social media break like Odell. I don't know. He might have to do something.
He might not even come back. He might be in Arizona social media break. Hey guys, this is what we doing right now.
No more breaks. You've already been on so many the whole morning.
Who, me?
You always on your phone. Who are you talking to? It's early.
Who's texting?
Are you talking to LeBron?
No, I got the LeBron. I got the LeBron Bo Jackson trainer.
Good. We're going to talk about LeBron next. If he needs some help this summer, you can get the latest.
I did.
We'll discuss with Matt Barnes next.